He had never imagined the sky could burn orange. The transport shook as it pierced the clouds of Korath Prime, metal screaming while gravity pressed Marcus Hale into his harness. He was no hero, no soldier, just a systems engineer sent to keep machines alive after a long, bitter war. 3 months earlier the fighting had ended, leaving scars on planets and people alike. Now came peacekeeping, maintenance, and the quiet hope of going home. Korath Prime belonged to the Korathi, towering reptilian warriors shaped by tradition older than human history. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, scales colored crimson, bronze, and gold, with 4 sharp eyes that missed nothing. For generations they had resisted coalition expansion, fighting with blades, honor, and stubborn pride. Exhaustion and negotiation finally stopped the bloodshed, but distrust still lingered in every glance. Marcus stepped onto the landing pad, heat shimmering under the alien sun. The outpost was functional and ugly, assembled from prefabricated blocks and humming generators. Colonel Reeves, the human commander, addressed the new arrivals inside a sealed briefing hall. His voice was firm, tired, and careful. The Korathi value strength, ritual, and respect above comfort, he warned. Never touch their weapons. Never interrupt their ceremonies. And never involve yourself in their internal conflicts. We are guests here, tolerated because the war is over. Marcus listened, already thinking about sensor diagnostics and power relays. Alien politics meant nothing to him. He planned to work, stay invisible, and survive his contract. During the first 2 weeks, nothing challenged that plan. He repaired climate towers, calibrated shields, and shared stiff nods with Korathi patrols. They watched humans with open disdain, believing reliance on technology proved weakness. On the 16th day, everything shifted. Marcus was returning from the northern array when raised voices echoed through the central plaza. A crowd had gathered, bodies forming a wide circle. He hesitated, remembering the warning, yet something pulled him closer. At the center stood 2 Korathi. One was a massive male, scarred and confident. The other was a female warrior holding a spear with a shattered tip. Even Marcus, ignorant of their customs, sensed danger coiling in the air. The crowd's silence felt heavy, charged with judgment and expectation. Marcus noticed the female's posture, proud yet strained, and the way the male's presence dominated the space. He did not understand their language, but hostility required no translation. Instinct whispered that he should leave immediately. Instead, he stayed, unaware that this single moment, this single choice to watch instead of walk away, would tear him from anonymity and place him inside an ancient story written long before humans ever reached the stars. Fate waited patiently, sharpening laws and consequences there. The male warrior spoke, his voice cutting through the plaza with practiced cruelty. Marcus's translator implant struggled, then delivered meaning in harsh clarity. The female was being accused of dishonor. Her father, once a legendary defender, had left behind a legacy she was now failing to uphold. The broken spear in her hands was proof. The male demanded submission or exile, his confidence fed by the silent crowd. The female lifted the damaged weapon anyway. Her stance was defiant, but Marcus saw the tremor in her arms and the flick of her secondary eyes searching for support. None came. The crowd watched without emotion, as if witnessing a sentence already decided. She asked for time, for a chance to forge a new spear and answer the challenge properly. Laughter rippled outward. The male stepped closer, dismissing her skill, her worth, her right to carry her father's name. He reached for the spear. Marcus did not think. He moved. Pushing between towering bodies, he felt heat, breath, and surprise surround him. Before the male's claws closed around the shaft, Marcus grabbed the broken spear and pulled it free. He raised it instinctively, placing himself between the 2 warriors. His heart pounded loud enough to drown thought. She has a defender, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the terror flooding him. Step back. Silence crashed down. Hundreds of alien eyes fixed on the human standing where no human belonged. The female stared at him, her scales shifting in patterns Marcus could not read. The male recovered first, mandibles spreading in open mockery. A human champion, he sneered. An insult layered upon shame. Before he could advance, an elder stepped forward. His scales were faded, his posture rigid with authority earned over decades. He studied the spear in Marcus's hands, then the female behind him. The elder spoke softly, yet the plaza leaned inward to listen. The human had taken the inheritance weapon and raised it in her defense. The male protested, calling Marcus ignorant, unworthy, outside their laws. The elder answered without anger. The law did not care for understanding, only action. A right older than memory had been invoked. Whether by intent or accident, it was done. The female tried to object, panic finally breaking through her control. The elder silenced her gently. When one accepts another's weapon and defends them openly, the bond is sealed. The defender becomes the chosen shield. The warrior becomes the shielded heart. Neither may refuse. Marcus looked down at the broken spear, then back up, suddenly aware that the ground beneath his life had shifted. Somewhere in his ear, Colonel Reeves was shouting for him to return immediately. The elder continued, voice ritualistic, explaining obligations bound until death or victory. The male warrior's fury burned bright, but even he stepped back. Sacred law outweighed pride. As the crowd dispersed, Marcus stood frozen, holding a future he never asked for. The female approached him slowly, studying the human who had changed everything with one foolish, courageous act. Up close, the warrior was even more imposing. Her 4 eyes studied Marcus with unsettling intensity, weighing him as if he were a flawed piece of armor. At last, she spoke, her voice controlled but edged with disbelief. He was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Marcus exhaled shakily and admitted it was probably the second option. He apologized, explaining he had not understood the ritual or the consequences. He had only seen someone about to be hurt and reacted. Her gaze sharpened. Not an enemy. Not an alien. Just someone. She repeated the words slowly, as if testing their weight. Carefully, she took the broken spear back from his hands, her claws avoiding his skin. She told him about her father, a warrior who had carried that weapon for 40 seasons before falling in defense of their colony. The spear had passed to her, along with his unresolved debts, rivalries, and expectations. The male challenger sought to claim her family's honor by proving her unworthy. Marcus pointed out the obvious. The spear had failed, not her. She shook her head. In Korathi belief, the warrior and weapon were one. A broken weapon reflected a failing warrior. She should have seen the fracture forming. Now, ancient law bound them together. The chosen shield must stand in her place in all matters of combat until her honor was restored. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the situation without panicking. He asked the only logical question he could form. How did one restore honor? She explained that a new spear must be forged, one worthy of her father's legacy. The ancestral forges lay in the northern mountains. Unfortunately, the path was controlled by the challenger's clan, who would deny her passage. Marcus nodded slowly. Then they would find another way. He was an engineer. Problem-solving was his specialty. She studied him again, curiosity replacing suspicion. He was willing to help even though the bond had been forced upon him. He shrugged, saying no one should face something like that alone, and besides, it seemed he had little choice. For the first time, her mandibles curved in what might have been a smile. Perhaps the ancestors had chosen wisely. A true warrior's heart was measured by action, not muscle or bloodline. Marcus protested weakly, insisting he was not a warrior. She disagreed. He had entered the circle when others stayed silent. He had raised a weapon in defense of another. Those were the acts that defined honor. She gestured toward the distant mountains, barely visible through the haze. If he was truly her chosen shield, they had much to do. She would teach him their ways before her enemy found a lawful path to challenge him. Marcus glanced toward the horizon, then back at her, realizing his quiet assignment was over. Yet when he met her eyes, he saw resolve mixed with hope. That was enough to make him nod. Section 4, The Journey Begins, 450 words. The base alarms wailed faintly in the distance, but Marcus did not turn back. He knew the consequences waiting for him. Disciplinary hearings. Possible discharge. A commander furious beyond reason. None of it felt as heavy as the knowledge settling in his chest. An ancient law had rewritten his life with a single instinctive act. There was no appeal. No explanation that would undo what had been done. As they walked away from the plaza, the warrior introduced herself properly. Her name carried the weight of lineage and loss. She explained the expectations of the bond in careful detail. She would provide for his needs, protect his honor, and guide him through Korathi custom. In return, he would stand in her place when challenges arose. He would face danger meant for her. The ancestors would see them as one. Marcus listened, absorbing each rule like a tightening net. He asked what would happen if he failed. She answered honestly. Dishonor, remembrance, and consequences far worse than exile. The law did not bend for weakness. It respected effort and intent above outcome. That knowledge frightened him more than any weapon. They stopped at the edge of the settlement where stone met open wilderness. The northern mountains loomed like jagged teeth against the burning sky. Somewhere beyond them waited the forges and the enemy who would not rest. Marcus flexed his hands, feeling how small and fragile they seemed compared to everything ahead. He admitted he had never fought anyone without tools, armor, or distance. She acknowledged that and told him fighting was not the only way to win. Adaptation remembered strength. As they prepared to leave, Marcus glanced back once toward the human base. He imagined Colonel Reeves shouting into a console, demanding explanations. He almost smiled. He had wanted an uneventful assignment. Instead, he had found purpose wrapped in danger. The warrior paused, studying him again. She asked one final question. Did he regret stepping into the circle? Marcus considered the fear, the uncertainty, and the impossible road ahead. Then he remembered the silence of the crowd and the look in her eyes when no one else moved. He shook his head. Regret belonged to people who walked away. She inclined her head in respect, a gesture rarely given to outsiders. The ancestors would watch their path closely. Success would restore her honor. Failure would end them both. Marcus exhaled and adjusted the pack she handed him. He was still an engineer, still untrained, still painfully human. Yet as they turned toward the mountains, he understood something fundamental had changed. He had raised a broken spear to defend a stranger. In doing so, he had become part of something ancient and unforgiving. The journey ahead would test him in ways he could not imagine. But for the first time since the war ended, Marcus felt certain of one thing. Whatever happened next, he would not face it alone.